What's up everybody, my name is Dandy and today I wanted to talk a little bit about Core Keeper. Been a while since I made a video, so I figured I'd jump right back into sharing tips and tricks that I use to game an achievement hunt. And Core Keeper is one of my most recent completed achievement hunts. It released its 1.0 version relatively recently, and I decided to finally go back and get all the achievements I was missing, and it took quite a bit of effort. I did it with some friends and my brother primarily. And I just wanted to share one of the strategies that I used for farming the levels in this game, because that can be a very lengthy process, and if you don't have a lot of time, it's good to know a fast way to get there. So let's jump in game and I'll talk you through it. Alright everyone, welcome to my world. This is the world that I beat the game on most recently and the character with which I did so. And fair warning, there might be some things you see around that could be considered spoilers. This is only going over some farming techniques that can be found very early game, but some of the weapons, armor, and things you'll see around the base do come from the very late game, so if that's going to bother you, you might want to click away. But either way, this is my base, and this is my character. So you can see that I have most of my skills maxed out. It was a separate character in an earlier version of the game where I completed mining, running, crafting, and fishing. Getting all of these skills to level 100 is required to obtain achievements. There's an achievement for getting every skill to level 100. But the only two new ones that came out with the update were magic and summoning, both of which took quite a while to train, but there are a few methods for getting up there. The rest of the skills that I 100 in this were just for the sake of fighting late game bosses. There are obviously benefits to leveling up every skill. I mean, I left fishing at 0, and if I had gotten to 100, I could have gotten bonus damage against bosses for eating fish, or just 6% of fishing added as range damage. So it's good to train all the skills, and if you're having trouble with certain bosses, really do work on getting all of these up there. But I think the ones listed are among the most easy to obtain and some of the most beneficial. Looking at you gardening and cooking, wouldn't expect those to be incredibly handy for damage, but when you have poison and more damage against poison enemies and just flat buffs, enhancements, more damage dealt, and passive healing, you can't go wrong. But what I'm going to talk about is how to actually farm the harder to work levels. So that's melee, ranged, magic, and summoning. Now, this method works best for melee, summoning, and magic. Range seems to have an issue where it doesn't always work, so that's just a heads up, and I'll explain more what I mean as I get into it. But these skills level up based on how much damage you are dealing. Well, not specifically damage, it's how many hits you accrue while attacking enemies. So it doesn't matter if you're using the easiest weapon to obtain in the game, or if you're using the Stormbringer, one of the final weapons you will get throughout the entire game. It's just how many times you actually hit an enemy, making weaker weapons more prone to be good level weapons, because a Rusty Dagger will take 7 or 8 hits to kill an enemy, where the Stormbringer will take much less, so it actually provides less experience. The only difference that higher level enemies make is how many hits it takes to kill them, thereby how much experience you get. But that's where this method comes in. In the middle of our rather hectic base, you can see this little zoned off area that I have to teleport over into. So, closed off in the depths of this area are a little mushroom man and some big mushroom men. Now, if you've played this game before, I'm damaging them. I gotta take off my armor set so that I don't deal radiation damage. If you'll notice, or if you've played this game, you may have noticed these enemies before. They are giant rock-headed mushrooms that will run at you, and when they collide with a wall or other obstacle, the rock breaks off their head and you can damage them. Until that rock breaks off their head, no matter what weapon you're using, even if it's, again, the Stormbringer, one of the most powerful weapons in the game, which is technically a physical damage melee weapon, it only deals 1 damage. It doesn't matter that I have almost maxed out my skills, I am only dealing 1 damage to these enemies and destroying parts of my base in the process, but we'll ignore that for right now. So even if I use something like the Phantom Spark, another legendary weapon you can obtain throughout the game, I'm only dealing 1 damage. And I know I said ranged has stipulations, I'll get into that. And even the summons that you can bring in are only going to deal 1 damage to these enemies. That makes them incredibly valuable for farming the levels. Not to say that these enemies are invincible, because they certainly are not. You can definitely kill them, even dealing 1 damage at a time. But you see here, he just started healing. That might have been hard to notice, but I'll attack him a few times again. I just insta-killed him. Okay, so that's why you don't want to use range. I was saving that for a little later, but something about ranged combat makes it sporadically break the rule of them not being able to take damage and deal a ton of damage to them. So with a melee weapon, you can see I can hit him all day with this pickaxe, and this is a very high-level pickaxe. It does, you know, 138 to 168 melee damage, or even if I pull out a better weapon, which I guess I don't really have right now, because I don't melee a lot on this character. But I just, no matter what I do, I can't deal more damage, you know? Even with the soul powers, it's just something about ranged combat occasionally breaks the rule of damage and instantly kills these enemies. So when it comes to range, we'll have to go with method number 2. But for melee, for summoning, for magic, all great skills to train on these mushroom guys, and it's the quickest way to idly farm them all up. I'll show you a couple examples. Alright, so I'm getting back into the area, and here's some of the best ways you can train these guys. First and foremost, if you hadn't noticed, I have them trapped on dugout islands. When you find them, they're going to be real mad, or when you have them spawn into your base by creating a little spawn area, they're going to be real mad. So you want to ram them into a corner, and then dig the corner out from around them so that they're stuck, because they will not aggro if they cannot reach you. So I'm going to go ahead and unequip my pet too. But they won't aggro when they can't reach you, so you don't have to worry about them trying to kill you or losing the armor on their head. Now again, these guys are best for training melee, magic, and summoning. Now you already saw summoning. When I summon in these pets, which obviously they're armor to increase the amount of pets you can have, all you have to do is punch him one time and your little summon should start going to work. They'll only deal 1 damage, and it's literally impossible for the summon to kill them before they despawn. Even at max rank, and I have the skill points that makes my summons last 50% longer, and even with the armor that makes them last longer, I've never had an issue with the minions killing them. And you can see he just healed there, so every time you're finished attacking him, you're going to want to give them a little time to heal back up so that you can keep using the same target over and over again. Because having them spawn in a controlled environment like this is completely luck-based and can take an eternity if you're not lucky. So for training magic, you're going to want to use, in my opinion, this staff here. It's called the Arcane Staff. The Arcane Staff is just 3.3 attacks per second. It's one of the faster staffs you can use in the game. So you just stand back, and it just insta-killed him. Alright, I had to relocate to do this part because ranged magic can also be a little finicky, but again, I'll show you where to train ranged and ranged magic later on. For melee, though, summoning is fine to train these guys, and for melee, the best weapon, honestly, is a rusty dagger or whatever type of dagger you can craft. Daggers have among the highest attack speed of any melee weapon at 3.3 attacks per second, so you can just sit here and stab. And honestly, you can see there's a repair bench up over here that has plenty of repair stuff next to it. You just hang out here, stab until you break the weapon. I'm going to turn all my different souls off. Stab until you break the weapon. And you can see there, I have an attack speed stem as part of leveling melee. That helps a ton. You go down this tree and get fast and furious. That's what makes me go from stabbing quickly to stabbing very, very quickly occasionally, like that. So this will help you get a lot of attacks in. You can break a knife completely on this guy without having to worry about killing him. And then you repair it, give it some time to give the mushroom some time to heal back, and just do it again. Is it a fun process? Not particularly. Is it effective? Very much. But again, it's hard to train ranged in any form, whether it's ranged magic or regular ranged, on these enemies because of the occasional ability to just instantly kill them. I can't explain it. I don't know why it breaks their rule of armor, but it does happen. So when you're switching from training melee or summoning, you're going to want to go for method number 2. Let me show you where that is. Alright, so I've explored a lot of this map, but for me, method number 2 lies over with one of the game's primary 3 bosses. So if you've never played this game, spoiler alert, this is going to show you one of the major bosses. I do plan to make a video on all the major bosses later, but that's for later. So you're going to want to find the Den of the Hive Mother. So you can see I built a wonderful little house here, and quite the elaborate contraption. This is what's going to help us continue leveling. Now, the character, or the Hive Mother's not currently here, but I have another summoning idol that I keep on standby just in case. So what you're going to want to do, I failed that teleport, what you're going to want to do is spawn the Hive Mother in where she's supposed to be spawned, and have the room set up like this. Now, you can narrow or widen the room, but what you want to focus on are these spawn nodules here, the little weird veiny holes on the floor. because one of the mechanics of this boss fight is that it is constantly spawning creatures. So you want to set up a bunch of conveyor belts all around this particular boss so that whenever she spawns something, it's funneled back towards you. I've also created a separation, kind of a U-shaped separation that is impassable by normal enemies so that they can't get to me. And I've made it a U so that they don't try to burrow through the walls to get to me, because the path going up and around is too wide and elaborate for their AI. They don't know to just go this way. They'll think about it if there's just walls in front of them right here, but the gap is untraversable to them. So for the most part, they'll get stuck around here and slowly get pushed into this crevice, if nothing else. So that's what all these conveyor belts are for. Now, the reason it's this far away from the boss is as I'm about to show you. When you make this boss angry, one of its attacks is it starts shooting these acid bombs, which is why the floor is covered in acid. One of the things that the conveyor belts does is help keep this acid from hurting you, because you can see when I stand there, I take damage, like that. But, alright, the enemies are spawning. But the conveyor belts will keep the acid from hurting you. And if you position the boss room just far enough away, you can see, right here, I'm being attacked. But if I'm over on this side, where the enemies are still coming to me, I'm not going to get attacked anymore. There's no acid on this side, I don't have to worry about the lasers, and I can spend my time here slowly killing enemies. So this is a very convenient place to train either magic or ranged, and it also helps you train your vitality, because vitality is trained by defeating enemies. The other farming method doesn't train vitality because you're never really supposed to kill the mushroom guy. But on this part, I can train my stats as much as I want. And if I want to come over here, I can just, attract the enemies to me, and once they start moving, you hop back over the wall, and all of a sudden you don't have to worry anymore. You can sit here, slay your various enemies all day long with either magic, which again I recommend using the arcane staff, or ranged, which a greater late game option is the Galaxite Chakram, because it has one of the faster attacks per second of any melee or ranged weapon. The only downside to the Chakram is that it does bounce around like that, so sometimes you get a couple hits out of one Chakram and it can be very convenient. Other times it ricochets often destroys your chests or damages an enemy you don't want to damage, so it can be a little risky. There are other weapons like the slingshot or the kunai later on that offer the same benefits without the drawback of the ricochet. You can also manage the ricochet by adding a variety of walls in to help control the bounce, but again, it just depends on the level of effort you want to put in. The slingshot is almost as fast and so much more manageable, and it does a lot less damage, so you don't really have to worry about killing the enemies as quickly. But again, it's not an absolutely glorious method, but between hitting minions like that and walking over to just hit the boss itself, you can make relatively quick work. I would definitely turn a YouTube video on the side or on your phone, and let the minions build up here, and then just take them all out one at a time. So it's a super quick way of working through these levels so that you can grind those late game achievements of getting 100 and everything, or just work to get your stats up so that you can push on to fight the stronger bosses, because some of these new late game bosses are insane. Either way, that's going to be all for me. I just wanted to show y'all a couple of the really easy methods that I use to farm levels in this game, because again, as an achievement hunter, I put a lot of time and effort into trying to beat this game, and even with a server of 4 or 5 people, it took a lot of effort to get where we were. It ended up just being me and my brother at the very end, which is fine because we were the only ones who wanted to grind the insane amount of levels that you need to fight some of these late game bosses. But it was super fun. I enjoyed the entire experience. I enjoyed all of the new boss fights since the last time I played in 2022. And I really appreciate that this game exists, because it was a wonderful experience that I don't think I'll forget very soon. So, all of that to say, thank you so much for watching. If you have any more questions or want to see me do some other kind of video, please leave me a comment and I'd be happy to help it out. Beyond that, I'll talk to you later, friends. Bye!